Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're all very welcome to our show. I'm delighted to see so many familiar faces around the room. A special word of thanks, or a special word of welcome to our county mayor here, Tom McHugh. With that end, I'd call on Tom just to say a few words and get the ball rolling this evening.
Thank you, Frank. Good evening, everybody, and it's my pleasure once again to be here in Fohenagh. I was here in November at your conference. It was a different kind of a day, or your different temperatures on the outside to what you have this evening. I very nearly got caught in the flood over the road there then. When I arrived here, my legs were like 2 balls of jelly because of the fright I got, having come through the flood, having made a bad decision. But anyway, I came the same route this evening, and it's a much more pleasant trip. I know that the heritage here in Fohenagh is very deep-rooted. I see a man down here in the audience looking at me who has been filled in from the past. That's John Mitchell from Port to Haskra. He's a man who, he was my neighbour in Tuam for many years, and his family and our family grew up together. I'm living in Tuam. I'm from Durmore. I notice I'm not the only Durmore man here this evening. I'm looking over here with Michael Howley, who is a very noted Durmore former footballer and current musician, etc. Ollie Turner is here as well. We regard him as a Milltown man, as if yes, he's not really a Durmore man, I suppose, yet. But however, anyway, great to see such a gathering here. And obviously, I know that you're a very proud community here, and you're very proud of your heritage. And I also figured that you're always a very energetic community, because it's not easy to get crowds like this in small communities in times like this. And nevertheless, I know that you take your heritage seriously. Marie Mannion rang me about this going back about 2-3 weeks ago and said, Frank, Gavin would be very pleased in the community in Fohenagh if I decided to come here this evening. So I said, no problem at all. It was a pleasure to doing so. I do believe myself that our heritage and the promotion of our heritage is the industry of the future. And if I had more time, I might go into that in more detail, but I won't do so this evening because I know there's lots of talent here and we're going to have an enjoyable evening. And fair play to your people for organising this type of activity. I wish you all well, and I wish you an enjoyable evening, and thanks again very much for inviting me here this evening.
Thank you very much to Frank for inviting me here again. As I say, it's wonderful to be here on this occasion. The Fohenagh District Historical Society, clearly I was about 15th in their list when it came to MCs for this. but I'm glad to get the call, no question about it. A huge amount of work has gone into tonight, and I think what we're hoping to achieve here tonight in our trip down memory lane is very much just to give you kind of a brief look over the past century or so of life in the parish and in the surrounding parishes as well. So we're going to tie that in with some storytelling, some nostalgia, but also some music. And I suppose what we're looking at here in front of us is a full orchestra of talent. We've already just got a brief snippet of their talents. We're going to hear much more of it throughout the course of the night. So give them a little bit of encouragement and say well done to our wonderful orchestra of traditional Irish musicians that we have with us here tonight. Thankfully, we're going to be enjoying them throughout the course of the night. Right, what does the night have in store for us then, folks? Well, we're going to be chatting a little bit later on with a number of people that we've done interviews with in the past couple of weeks. And again, there's some of our older parishioners looking back on times and what it was like growing up in this neck of the woods, going back into the last century and right up to the modern days. The changes that have occurred over time, the differences in education, in transport, in employment, and getting an idea, especially for the youngsters that are here amongst as well, and I might include myself amongst that if that's okay, about what it might be like back then. So we're really going to enjoy the interviews with Julia Goley, who's going to be up as well. We popped over to Julia in Ahastra a couple of weeks back and we spoke with her, and also Michael Kennedy from Palace will be chatting to Mike, and you'll see that on our screen here in the next few minutes. Coming up in a moment, we're going to have a song from the legend himself, Sean Glennon from Doon. Sean is going to sing us The Swallow. Vera Barrett from Clonbrock has joined us as well. Vera, along with Sally Ann and the rest of the musicians, are going to be entertaining us for the duration of the night. Pat Ward from Skahana, the Shanachie, has joined us as well, and Pat is going to be giving us a few scales as well later on and bringing a touch of lightness to proceedings as well. Also, Henry Dooley is here as well. The legend Henry from Palace is going to be singing us a couple of songs, as will the great Bobby Kilkenny from Ballinasloe. And in the second half of our show, of course, we'll be chatting as well with Tony O'Gorman, formerly of Fohenagh, but of course now living in Galway. And before that, in the first half of our show, we'll be chatting with the first of our live interviews with the great Killeor man himself, Pather Burns. Pather, who joins us down there as well. So we'll hear from the two lads as well a little bit later on. Towards the end of the night, I think you're really going to enjoy yourselves. Just before we wrap things up, we'll announce the winner of that lovely 2 nights B&B in Clifton. We'll hear from Jojo Hessian from Ballinasloe, and the Straw Boys are joining us as well to really give us a very much an uplifting finish to tonight's proceedings. But to kickstart, let's get started with The Swallow from the great man Sean Glennon. Let's give him a big round of applause.
For of lands the swallow now is speeding, for warmer climes and the sun-drenched foreign shores, as cooler breezes tell of summer's fading. My heart with you into the heavens will soar. O graceful swallow, bear a message of love, for on your journey lies the land of my heart. Glide downward as you see from above a sea-swept isle from which I've had to part. Among those shores are all that I care or live for, my home, my loved ones, waiting for my return. As down you sweep, shed my blessings upon them, the tale of love which in my heart still burns. On that green isle are all that I love, my home, my people, awaiting my return. As down you sweep, my blessings shed upon them, and all the love that in my heart still burned. O land of my heart, glide downward as you see from above a sea-swept isle from which I've had to part. Among those shores are all that I care or live for, my home, my loved ones, waiting for my return. As down you sweep, shed my blessings upon them, the tale of love which in my heart still burns, the tale of love which in my heart still burns.
He was 14 and a perfect mouse. Oh, didn't I wait with weeping and wailing? The pain in my heart was too deep to conceive. My mother cried, strong child, was his glory. But all I could answer was steady on him. I've seen the old cabin beside the wee glory. I've seen the old crossroads where we used to dance. I rambled where we called his story, and my girlish heart felt the thrill of romance. Oh, now all around is so dark and so dreary, no moon in the shadows, no purple, no leaf. Now she's in the sun, through the casement shines cheery, since I lost my darling boy Teddy. Will I ever forget when the big ship was ready and the time it had come for my love to depart? How I cried like a child, oh, but says to you, Teddy, with a tear in my eye and a stone in my heart. It was far too better, his fate he was leaving, but what would be going to the joy I will feel if you'd only come back to me tender and loving. Oh, but my own darling Teddy, oh, but my own darling Teddy, oh,
I hate the films they gave me, put them into black and white. Yeah, brilliant, perfect.
those times? Because obviously it was a very, very different time.
First of all, I was hoping you wouldn't mention the year I was born. I prefer to think that I was born a long time ago. And that's the way I keep it. I was born into a large family. It was large, even at that time. There was 11 of us in the family with my father and mother. And I can tell you, on a small farm, it wasn't easy at that time. But it's said that poverty is bearable when everybody is poor. And everybody that time that I knew, with very few exceptions, were poor. And in saying we were poor, we didn't have the things, the luxuries that we had during this plenty time. And I presume we're just as well off. We're nearly as far back now as we were then. Don't mention that to any of the politicians.
There's one right here in front of us anyway, so we can't go too far, Father. You take that back to the chamber, Tom, won't you? I'm sure. But I suppose, Father, looking back to it, I mean, as an upbringing, obviously large families were very common that time in Ireland.
Well, they were that common. Well, in all places, but they were common. And everybody in the family, in a large family, helped everybody else. We went to school in Cathaoirleach. It was an old school at the time, without any sanitation whatsoever of any description. And it was a two-room school, small school by comparison, with a big number of pupils. At one stage there were 100 registered on the roll. You can imagine that in two rooms, two teachers. We had what we considered, and I think still is considered, good teachers. We had, our principal was Mr. Kearney. Pat Kearney, I think he was a Mayo man. And incidentally, his daughter-in-law is teaching in Cathaoirleach at the minute. But I remember that time there were some extra, if you could say extra, poor people. And Pat Kearney, Lord bless him, he was in the Vincent de Paul in Ballinasloe. He lived in Ballinasloe. And I remember, we all remember, bringing shoes and Wellingtons, and nobody knew where they came from, but Pat Kearney knew that they were needed, and he was good enough to help them out. Now, we went to, when we were going to Mass in Cathaoirleach Church at that time was so old that the Blessed Sacrament wasn't kept there, not until it was rededicated some years afterwards. And we going to school was, you can imagine what it was to be getting lunches for 7 or 8 maybe going at a time. It wasn't easy, I can tell you. And all the bread was home baked. The cake wouldn't last long in the morning, or in the evening. But we were happy enough, and we looked forward particularly to Christmas. And no matter how bad they were, we always had a visit from Santa Claus, and we believed in them far beyond the time that we should. We couldn't believe it.
Glance down at the age profile of the audience here, because we're getting anything away. I suppose in particular, you look at the time, the 1920s were a very difficult time in Ireland's history. Did that impact much around here in terms of, I suppose, the civil war that was going on at the time?
I always remember one evening, a lorry load of police-state soldiers came in our road, and they were looking for a particular man, a man by the name of Larkin. And funny, we were outside, we were playing, and they said, did you see anybody around? I said, oh, they did. Mickey Larkin was here. And the minute they heard Larkin was a neighbour of ours. He had a son living up in Hill, or a grandson. So they got very, 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 very enthusiastic about a search for Larkin, and found out that he was an old man with a big whisker. And very shortly after that, a couple of men who were on the run. One of them was from Deer Park, Jack Keogh. I'm sure some people here may have known him. And he was young fellas around. But I remember Jack Keogh in our kitchen, and he had a revolver, and he was showing my parents how it works. And they were terrified that we'd get shot.
With some justification, I'd say as well. But obviously the army was going on to play a huge part in your life, Paddy, because obviously, you know, first of all, was the army an option in terms of a career for a young fella around, let's say, the parish here of Fohenagh, or were you somebody who broke away from that ranks with the fact that you did join the army?
Well, I joined the army the war started in 1937, and I joined the army in 1939. And I was brought to the Curragh, brought to the right. Incidentally, there was a fellow stationed with me. From the Curragh I was trained, and I went to Spike Island. And there was a Dublin chap there. And he showed me a letter he got from his sister. And she said, dear Paddy, she could imagine now that from Dublin to Spike Island or something. Dear Paddy, why don't you stay where you're pushed? Paddy said, pushed is right. But Spike Island to me was idyllic. I couldn't imagine being in a nicer place at that time. There was a great atmosphere there. Spike is not far from Cove. Yeah, the ferry can go across, straight across in full tide, but it has to go around by Hall Bowling when the tide is low. And we had there was one incident I'd like to tell you. We came down for our breakfast, myself and a chap from Tipperary, a small street, and the cook sergeant was from Nina, and he was a mad follower of the Tipperary football team, the Tipperary hurling team. So Fitz came in with me, and he was, Paddy, you know my Paddy now, he was leaning over the counter like this, and you could hang your hat on his lip. So after a while, Fitz said nothing to him. You know, Fitz knew that the chip had lost. And he said, any more with the whole match? Yes, to Paddy. And of course, Paddy knew the Tipperary had lost. When he went, he picked up his whatever he had around him and went and didn't chat anymore with Fitz. He didn't like the idea of making fun of Chip.
I suppose the one thing looking at the army that time, I mean, obviously it was the Irish army, and you know, Ireland trying to maintain its neutrality during World War II. Was that a case then that you were keeping an eye out on Spike Island for just the Germans or the Brits as well?
Well,
It was kind of selective stuff, was it?
sure, but I know I was in the Signal Corps, and that was radio telegraphy. And I remember towards the end of the war, when they had what they called lookout posts, and they had members of the LBF manning those posts. And when an aircraft would be spotted that to be phoned into that, in our case, into Spike Island, and all they would say, they wouldn't address a radio message to anybody, it was just broadcast, and to say unidentified plane, I was going to say unidentified British plane. unidentified plane flying west at so many thousand feet, and that was all. There was kind of a code that they wouldn't identify aircraft flying over Ireland. I don't know, was that part of the neutrality? As far as we were concerned, it was part of the plan.
Was it that the fear would be that other people would be tapping into that and would say the Germans could read your messages and understand that they were British planes?
Absolutely. They would think, and when they didn't identify them, they weren't breaking their neutrality, and they weren't easing up on anybody. But I remember before I left the Curragh, there was a lot of, at least some German prisoners of war in the Curragh at the time. And they'd be going on marches and they'd be singing their German songs. And, you know, a lot of them worked with farmers around the Curragh. They were very nice people, I must say. We were young at the time, and it was all excitement for us.
Would you be the only one from this locality who would have been involved in the army that time?
I met none of them. None of them went as far south as I did. I haven't gone any farther south. I went to Tralee and Youghal, a place called Castle Creek. And we were stationed in a house near, in bed at night, in the window you would see the Galley House, Galley Head Lighthouse shining in the window. And I was the only one from around here anyway that I met. There was a few of them, a Dylan fellow from Kew, but I was the only one that went, as I said, that person.
Oh, after the war then, obviously, or let's just finish up. I mean, was there ever any situation whereby you felt in any kind of danger, Paddock? Because while Ireland maintained their neutrality, I'm sure there were situations whereby, you know, once or twice you came into a bit of a scrape.
There was one night I remember, there was a bit of a scare around Spike Island, and the chaplain introduced or conferred, you know, a public absolution on anybody because they were afraid that there was going to be an attack. And I remember a fellow saying to the sergeant, well, Sergeant, if there were land tonight, where would it land? And the reply was, they'd land all over the whole bloody place. So it didn't come to anything, thank God.
After the war then, obviously your skills in the communication course stood you when it went to going on and having a further career.
When we were disbanded, the Post Office Engineering Department were looking for people. Incidentally, a lot of Post Office telegraphers joined the army, but we were trained in things of the Post Office, and practically every one of them that I knew were absorbed into the Post Office Engineering Department, was lately known as Telecom. Which all of us got jobs where I suppose we were fairly well compensated for the hardship we had. And I can tell you that there was some hardship, but we were compensated.
Obviously moving on then through the decades, obviously we got out of the war years. You had a family, Paddock?
Oh, I had a family. I had 3 sons. And the first 2 sons were born, we were very proud, myself and my wife. My wife, incidentally, was from Galway. And our 3rd child was coming along. And all of our children were born in Galway. And, things looked fine. So, baby was born, we brought him home to another boy, incidentally, and Dr. Michael Brown was in Bannister. I'm sure somebody here knew him. He was the greatest gentleman that I ever met. And he came down, came to the house to Mary, and he was trying to tell her that everything wasn't right. And he said to her one day, well, when Cronin grows up, he'll be very fond of music. It didn't ring a bell at all. Eventually, he told Mary. I was out working and Mary told me it sure. Our world fell apart. But time went on, and then we had to bring him down to a Dr. McHugh, another gentleman in Galway. He was he was the doctor that dealt with that, and he confirmed that Cronin was Down syndrome. And I said to him, will he walk? Will he talk? Of course he will walk and he'll talk. Again, he did walk and he did talk. And he had some lovely legs.
What's it?
Is he with me?
Yeah, whereabouts is he located today? Or where's he based?
He's in Tuam. He's down at the Trinity Road in Tuam with Ability West is the name of the association. And funny thing, when that was called the Galway Association, I was chairman for 2 occasions. And at one stage, I never thought I'd be the parent of a boy to be in the service. But in the service now, in Tuam. And he goes to a nursery, I think that'd be not mine. He goes there every day, he loves it, and he barely, we go down almost every Saturday to see him. And you more think of coming home than anything else.
I said, but like that and everything else now it's gone out of my head. But I thought to us, he was kind, and a fine dash he put in watch and chain and the lower hat. He'd be prominent at every big amusement over, and he was this night at a dance where he met up with a big swank of a one. Oh, and herself were out on the floor with every set. Well, coming on to the end of the night, Richie put the question to her. Quick mover. Was there any chance of the conveying? She didn't raise any objection, and away they went. And when they arrived at the father's house, she said to Richie, she says, you might as well bowl in now and meet the family. And you know, it's the right way to do things. They went in, and her father turned out to be a lord. Look at that. Of course, the bottle was produced. They didn't have it, no one had have it. And after a few nice little handfuls all round, she says to her father, she says, I'm thinking of marrying this young man. Will you wish you matches of the Lord and don't disgrace us? For everyone knows that you can't marry any lord than another. And what is it, he said, we know about this young man? Likely as not he was born in a caravan. Hinting at a certain thing. Was I now, said Richie, getting very teachy in himself. I'll have you know, he says, that my father is the Earl of Banmore. Only, says the Lord, that will be very easy to find out, sending upstairs for the agent. And the agent came down and he dispatched the agent over to Ireland. He told him to find out if there was such a place as Banmore, to see if there was another there, and to find out how he was situated. So the agent, he arrived over in Ireland, and after a tunnel, travelling round, he came to the townland of Banmore, where you had a long boring going up to a house, small house, no bigger than my own, no great scope in it, room and kitchen. And on either side of the boring you had goats with only their heads and beard above the 2 sides of the ditches up along. And the agent, being from the city, and I suppose he never saw a goat before, he looked at him and he said, good morning. He went on up and into the yard, and if he did it, sent the man in the house, came to the door to meet him, and the agent said, are you the Earl of Banmore? Of course I am, he said. There's no other family of that surname in this town, and won't you come in? He went in, and when that old man found out that he was from England, well, he filled him up with every sort of a story. The old sat there talking, and the agent in the corner fit to split. And then now they're getting serious. Watch the cuteness of them. Of course, he said, you wouldn't find me here now at all in this Fohenagh, except at my castle below in Finuy is being discomfort at the moment. Mrs. Ellis was there too, foostering around, nice little back of a woman. And no time at all, oh, she had a great feed up here on the table. And below here at the foot of the kitchen, you had this contraption. We say now that you had two small creamery tubs and a fire under one of them, and then a pipe going out through the wall. And roly-boly pipes going from one to another, and a nice little drip out into a white enamel bucket. Every now and again the old man would go down and he'd bring up the full of a low saucepan and he'd give it to the agent until at the heel of the hunt the agent was paralytic. Bedtime came, and where were they going to put him? So what did the old man do? He went out in the field and he put a basket of rushes. He brought in the green rushes and he spread them there on the flag of the fire, and he says to the agent, he said, "Hung yourself down there now for the night," and the agent, well, he didn't know where he was. And in the morning, the old man came in again with the fork, and he gathered up all these rushes and he threw them abroad in the yard. And then, of course, after breakfast, the agent said goodbye and he hit over to England. And when he arrived at the Lord's house, the Lord says to him, "Tell me, is there such a man in Ireland as the Earl of Banmore?" "Indeed there is," said the agent. "And tell me," says the Lord, "how is he situated?" "I tell you that now," says the agent. "That man is so powerful that to get to his residence, I had to pass through my long rank of soldiers with fixed bayonets." "He's so wealthy, he has his own distillery." And to give you a further example of his riches, the bed that I slept in last night will never be used again, but was thrown out of the wall. Well, what could the Lord say to that or anyone else? Richie, he married a lady, and from that day out he never had to do a hand's turn. More luck to him.
I am thinking tonight of the old rustic bridge that dwells o'er the murmuring stream. It was there, Maggie dear, when our hearts got cheer, and we strayed 'neath the most gentle beam. Then he let the stream gently ripple down Erin's lovely. For 6 long weeks we ploughed the sea from Queenstown to Glencar, and like an arrow through the air till we landed in New York, where the Yankee boys with stars and stripes came flocking round to see the gallant band of Peening men from Erin's lovely. Then one of them stepped up to me and asked me, did I know the greenwoods of Tipperary or the glens of Barlow? Or could I tell where Crowley fell, he died his land to free? Or the tower that Captain Mackie sacked down Erin's lovely? Oh, I can tell where Crowley fell, 'twas in Kilclooney Wood, and the tower that Captain Mackie sacked, 'twas by his side I stood. When he raised his hand, we gave 3 cheers, which made the tyrants frown, and we raised the green flag o'er our head, the harp without a crown. He also asked me, could I tell where Wolfe Tone's body lay, and could I tell the resting place of him at sacred clay? And what about the brave old wires that Wicklow mountain line, or the 3 Manchester martyrs, and Larkin and O'Brien? Oh, when I was leaving Ireland, we came through sweet Kildare, and if my memory serves me right, Wolfe Tone is lying there. While going round through Dublin town, I passed Glasnevin through. It is there that Robert Kenneth lies, the patriot lying true. So now I'm tired of roaming, and the seas I will cross o'er, just to feel the clasp of friendship's hands when I return once more. For when I'll go home to sweet Larrow, the boys will welcome me, and I'll help to float the Peening boat down Erin's lovely.
These are serving tea and coffee at the back of the hall if you'd like a drink. We'll be back in about 15 minutes.
Nothing like the old cup of tea and the biscuits and the people working in the kitchen. It's a real community spirit there now. Grove up. Good lad there. I tell you, but that is, it could only happen in Ireland to have a community event like this.
Many years
I left my friends and parents for a far and distant shore to try and make my fortune in far America. But the loneliness that is in my heart, no one can take away. It's well I do remember when I was but a boy, I would wander down that winding road, and my heart was full of joy. By the great O'Connor mansion and the vast unbroad domain, but when at night I go to sleep, I see them all again. Now, oh, take me back to Paris, where the ash and bluebell grow. Oh, take me down by old Lismore, where the Columbia River flows, where the old mill once was sandy, by the old bridge made of stone. Oh, take me back to Paris, my old dear Irish home. When we were children long ago, and we traveled off to school, with our bare feet on that gravelled road, with our book, our bag and rule, as we drank from that old springing well, that the heather from the bar, was the herdsman tending to his flock, with his cap, his stick and dog. On bonfire night we'd gather to water dear St. John, with merriment and laughter, and to sing a happy song. Hear the old folk telling stories of old legends long ago, of the leprechauns and fairies who lived in old Lismore. Oh, take me back to Paris, where the ash and bluebell grow. Oh, take me down by old Lismore, where the Columbia River flows, where the old mill once was standing, by the old bridge made of stone. Oh, take me back to Paris, my old dear Irish home. Oh, now I'm getting older, and my hair is turning gray. The tears are welling in my eyes, because I'm far away. But when at night I need to pray, I will ask my God above to let me go back home at last and meet the ones I love. Oh, take me back to Paris, where the ash and bluebell grow. Oh, take me down by old Lismore, where the Columbia River flows, where the old mill once was standing, by the old bridge made of stone. Oh, take me back to Paris, my